bike looks good back there, Remko.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Poker Central podcast. Brent hangs with me, and we have a very, very, very special guest today. He could make some space on his busy calendar. Mr. Norman Chad, welcome to the show. What an honor to have you. Brent, I'm not even going to start with you. I just want to hear from Norman. I'm wearing the glasses so that I'm not the only one here with 20/20 eyesight. Norm, first and foremost, how are you holding up during the quarantine?
Oh, that's great, Norman. I see you've got it on.
Yeah.
We can hear the podcast on replay. Okay.
Brent hangs with me, and we have a very, very, very special guest today. Norm, are you with us, Norm?
To a hot start.
Mr. Norman Chad, welcome to the show. What an honor to have you. Brent, I'm not even going to start with you. I just want to hear from Norman. I'm wearing the glasses so that I'm not the only one here with 20/20 eyesight. Norm, first and foremost, how are you holding up during the quarantine?
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
Norman, we're live. You're playing the podcast, which is on a site.
I haven't touched anything.
You must have YouTube open.
You have YouTube open, I think.
Just folks in the chat, just bear with us. We're sort of used to this thing with Norman. He'll figure it out. He's
open.
Norm, can you still hear us? Let's establish that first.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. All right, back to square one then. How are you holding up? Clearly not too well with this whole quarantine.
Well, I thought I'd hit bottom until you all called this morning, and then now I'm on this non-award winning, not even nominated for award winning podcast.
I mean, we might never have podcast awards again, so that chance might be out the window for you for the future.
It won't affect my life any bit. I won't sleep any less. I won't sleep any more. And it won't affect the nightmares that I have on a daily basis.
For the people watching this tremendous podcast, high energy moment here from Norman Chad, please let us know in the chat what you want to know from Norman Chad. We are going to have him on the show for as long as it takes for these pizzas to get ready that he has in the oven, or perhaps someone will come barging down his doors to collect any outstanding gambling debts. Both of those options are actually quite possible. But what have you been doing during the quarantine? There's no poker to talk about, really. There's nothing really happening. Are you picking up any new hobbies?
My wife left. She didn't leave me. We're still married. But she left to go to Maryland. Okay. So she's 2,500 miles away.
Safe distance.
Our dog died.
Oh, God.
2 weeks ago. This is like a fucking country Western song. So my wife left because she had to go back east. Our dog died after a routine surgical procedure failed. And I'm sitting here in a pool of my own depressive sweat every day. And then you all called this morning and you want me to come on to, good morning, Brent. Good morning, Remko. So I came on to make the quarantine and the shutdown and the lockdown and the pandemic a little brighter for you and your listeners.
I mean, this therapy session is free, Norm, so you can let it all out. We're here for you.
I'm actually very depressed now after I'm sorry. Condolences with Daisy. No joke. I know you guys were very close.
Yeah.
Tough loss.
We were actually on my nascent YouTube channel, which apparently Jeff Plattsburgh and Brent Hangstein like to make fun of when they're doing live streams of poker events. The YouTube channel was actually was set up to make Daisy the breakout star. I thought that if people saw Daisy often enough on the YouTube thing, that they would sign her up to do something more. But unfortunately, due to surgical malfeasance, Daisy is no longer with us.
I mean, Daisy was the true bright spot in your video, so you were onto something there.
Yes, she was the true bright spot. Thanks for pointing that out, Remko.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over the videos. Do you think I don't understand English? I understand that at all. I understand that. Go right ahead. What else you got?
I have a list of big words that I want to use on the show today that I've been practicing. So, bear with me on the English. But in general, though, Brent, are you worried about Norman at this point?
Well, I've been worried about Norman since I first saw him airing on ESPN, a couple of decades ago. But he also lost the XFL. I know that was near and dear to his heart, making predictions. The only thing I believe he was making money at. Norman, is that wrong? Poker has not been so kind to you as of the last 2 weeks. The XFL, however, that was your moneymaker.
Okay, if you want to, you're combining fact with fiction. You're trying to create friction through your fiction. Okay. First of all, I don't make sports bets. I haven't made a sports bet since 1984. I was doing NFL, XFL against the spread bets, picks on my YouTube channel, Norman Chad YouTube channel. I don't know what the number is. And I was 11-5 when the league went down. So yes, I would have been making money if I was betting on those. Okay. But I do not sports bet, have not made a sports bet in 36 years. As far as the poker goes, I'm usually a winner in poker, but the past 2 weeks I had the worst 2 weeks of my semi-poker career. And so I retired from online poker after those only 2 weeks I've ever played online poker.
Was those 2 weeks that you just had because you finally played enough hands for the cards to realize how bad of a player you are, or do you feel like there was any sort of, I don't know, malfeasance going on behind the scenes?
You know, Remko, I don't know. I forget the exact Italian expression, but it translates your mama pees while standing. And the fact that that's the nature of your question, I would say it in Italian if I could right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the variance, whatever, the EV and the variance and all that caught up to me because I was finally playing enough hands and to cause a massive 4-figure loss over several sessions that I have to pay off today to the bag man who's coming to my house sometime in the next few minutes. Look up bag, you all know what a bag man is, look it up. They don't even have bag man. This guy's a bag man.
Well, speaking of bag man, we've got some folks in the chat. Maybe one of them is on their way to your house right now. James Morris says, "You can do it, Norm. How the mighty have fallen." Yeah, that's true. I wonder, living legend equals Norman Chad. There you go, Norm. You actually have someone that still respects you. Card player lifestyle. We love you, Norm. That's Robbie. Nothing but positivity on his end. He also has a great question. What did you bet on in 1984, considering that was how many years ago since your last bet? What's the math there?
36.
Almost 36 years. August of 1984. I've been sports betting for about a year and a half, very small, generally $50 a bet, sometimes $100 a bet, generally 50. I'd built up maybe over a year and a half betting NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball. Like between $1,000 and $15, I was ahead. And then 1 week in August of 84, betting baseball, I made my first bet on a Tuesday, and I lost it. And I made a next bet on a Wednesday, one bet each night, lost it again, $50 bet each night. And I decided to double it on Thursday to get my money back, bet 100 and lost it. Decided to double my bet on Thursday or Friday, lost it. Decided to double my bet again on Sunday to try to get all my money back. So it was like $800 bet at this point, and lost it. Plus I broke my rule. At that point, I was a Baltimore Orioles fan, big Orioles fan. And one of my rules was do never bet for or against the team you root for, because you just emotionally screwed up with them. And the pitching matchup was such where I said, I'll get my money back in the Orioles that Sunday. And they lost. The manager made a bad pitching change, and they gave a 3-run homer to the Toronto Blue Jays. They brought in Tim Stoddard, who actually won an NCAA basketball championship with NC State when he was a teammate of David Thompson. He became a relief pitcher in the majors. He was the Orioles closer. He was terrible. The manager brought him in. He walked the bases loaded, and then he gave a grand slam homer to lose the game. I wish I was making that all up. I was listening to it on the radio in my car with my fiance, who did not know I had bet on the game, and she was wondering why we were listening to the game on Sunday afternoon while driving on a beautiful day in Washington. And so I lost all my money. I decided that if I could lose control that way, because I'm fairly intelligent, I'm fairly rational, if I could lose control that way over a week and just double my bet every day and lose every bet, then I'm never making another bet the rest of my life. It's appropriate you bring this up, you two, because we had to settle on Tuesday with the bookie, who was a printer at the Washington Post where I worked, and handing that money over, going to the bank and handing him over $1,600, which at that time felt like, $16,000 easily, if not more, just was the dirtiest feeling I ever had. I decided I'd never make another bet, and I never made a bet. So I had to hand over that money, and it felt like $1 million to me. Today, I have to hand over this money. That's a pretty thick envelope.
Wow.
A lot of Benjamin Franklin's in there. I've got to hand this money over to a Ukrainian bagman for a lot more money than I had to hand over in 1984. And this feels like $100,000 to me. It's $5,600.
Why do you have $5,600 in an envelope? Can you walk us through what's happening right now with this Ukrainian bagman?
my regular poker game, of course, was closed down because the casino closed down. The regulars there had a contact with some unregulated site in which they could just put a private game up with all the people. We'd know all the people in it, 30, 40 people that we all play in this mixed game. And you had to register with your own name so we knew who we were playing with. And I played on it I never played online before. I've watched online and stuff like that. I played online for 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. And the first week I lost $2,000. That was one session. And this past week I lost $5,600. And something didn't seem right to me. Something seemed a little off to me. At this game, I'm a slightly better than average player. At Hollywood Park over the last 20 years, I've booked wins 18 of the 20 years. Never high, never, I lose. I've never lost a lot. I lost more in these 2 weeks. That would be what, $7,700 or something. I lost more in these 2 weeks than I have in any year at Hollywood Park this century.
So
no wonder why your wife went to Maryland. Is this what's
she doesn't
going
know
on?
about this yet, and thankfully she's not one of your 800 viewers. I don't know how many viewers you get. But I'm telling you, something was not kosher with this game.
I believe it right away. I mean, if anything sounds shady, it's unregulated online poker sites. I mean, Norm, you couldn't see this coming from a mile away?
I there's certain reasons I tell most people to stay offline over the course of my life, and I think online should be legal, and we should also be able to play it. And I'm always wary for people on several fronts. First of all, just because of gambling addiction, it's harder to detect for someone who's doing it online than if somebody's out in the public. So people who do have gambling problems, those are really going to multiply online. Nobody knows you're doing it. You can do it, obviously, you can do it buck naked in your bedroom. That's first of all. Second of all, the security of your money, which I never thought was a problem before Full Tilt. I never thought that was even a problem, but the security of your money, if you can get your money back out. Third of all, if somebody, Russ Hamilton style gets into the system, which is possible here, and is a super user. And then fourth of all, people obviously play partners online. A lot easier to play partners online than it is live. Even though people used to tell me, oh, no, you got hand histories. You got hand histories. If you're smart, you can play partners online for the next 100 years without it being detected. You just, you can't be just too ridiculous about it. So for all those reasons, I always tell people not to play online. This was people I knew. It's people. It's two of the people who are running it are people it's everybody I know. So I just don't think there's going to be a problem. And yet I do believe there is a problem.
So Norm, is it a possibility that for 20 years, these people have been letting you win, and now they finally found their chance to get it all back?
It's the slowest grift I've ever seen in my life. The only thing I liked about online Remko was the chat box, because I'm very talkative of the game. So these people just sitting there clicking buttons just forever, and it's really boring. So I'd be chatting left and right. I'd be making fun of people, doing my usual shtick, and most of them loved it. One or two told me to shut up. Like they didn't even like the sound of my voice when they couldn't hear it. That's how much people hate me sometimes. So, I love chatting in the box, and I played a couple online charity tournaments the last couple of weeks for the first time, and the chat box was the highlight of that for me. I love chatting in the box.
I want to go.
Platt is in the chat. He said he would actually pay you $5,600 just to get in that game alongside you. I don't think it's partners, Norman, but just you must have another $5,600 where that came from. Ian Sheriff's in the chat. He's saying hello. Jeff Platt looks like he had some other things to say. Probably going to leave soon because this is a very boring story. Okay. Well, Jeff, nice to have you.
Jeff Platt, by the way, has the attention span of a tsetse fly. Okay. Think about how big a tsetse fly is? It's not even this big. How big of a attention span can a tsetse fly is? Its brain is the size of you can't even see. Okay. So Jeff Platt, he's like the luckiest white man in America. He has overachieved that he actually has a broadcast platform. Okay. So I don't want to hear from Jeff Platt that the story's too boring.
Global Poker Award nominee Jeff Platt, and let's not forget the accomplishments that he's already managed to gather over all these times. What I want to do, Norm, I want to go back in time a little bit. You said you haven't placed a sports bet since 1984, but then since then, is that when you discovered poker and found yourself a new habit, or did you also get into drugs and alcohol and other vices up until the point that the World Series of Poker became a real thing?
Okay, again, I feel like if I could do the Trump imitation, but that's such a nasty question. All your questions are so nasty. Why do you ask nasty questions? Anyway, I don't do impersonations. And you also mentioned drugs and alcohol. Just small tidbit about myself. Other than alcohol, I have never used any drug in my life. I've never even smoked marijuana. So I am drug free other than alcohol, and most of my alcohol is wine.
I mean, $5,600 to the bag man will definitely get you to try some weed, probably.
Not even like an edible. Would you ever sit down, just the three of us in a room, maybe try an edible?
Yeah, my wife
does edible,
particularly when I've had some headaches the last few months, and also depression. So she does do edibles, and she doesn't smoke marijuana anymore. But yeah, I haven't even done an edible. I mean, if you're clean from that standpoint this long, you might as well stay clean. I would use medical marijuana if I needed it for health reasons. But to answer Remko's original part of the question, which wasn't nasty, I started playing socially poker in college. Would have been late the 77 to 81. I was in college, so I was already playing poker, and I started playing serious poker, serious like higher stakes, like $20 home game type of thing, $20 stakes games in the 1980s, and also games. One game that was obviously being cheated. Most of the games were clean, but I couldn't tell you how stupid I was. I finally figured out that one underground game I was playing at DC was obviously not on the up and up. And I kept playing 5 or 6 more times, just because it was, the only game in town. It was action, but that game was so corrupt. I couldn't believe it, and it kind of soured me on a higher stakes poker.
Is this 5,600? Is this the most you've ever lost in a poker session or in a week?
Well, this is, it's possible I've lost 5,000 in a week before. I don't think so. I know I've lost 5,000 in a month. I always keep monthly records. I keep a record of every one of my sessions ever. So yeah, the 5,600 is, I'm sure it has to be the most I've lost in a week, or yeah, has to be.
Lifetime, what's that graph look like? I mean, are we going this way? I mean, I assume we're just doing one of these all the way down to the depths, but paint us a picture.
Nasty questions. I mean, you think I was Russ Hamilton. You think I was Mr. Batar. Okay, so I have a record of every blackjack session I've ever played. My first wife started me playing blackjack in 1984. She took me to 1986 maybe. She took me to Atlantic City, and I didn't start keeping poker records until 1984, which I regret, because I was playing small games. So I was playing starting in 1977. So at Hollywood Park, for instance, in this century, I think I mentioned this a little earlier, but you might not pay attention. I'm a winner 18 of the 20 years. I generally book a win small wins, between 5 and 10K for the whole year. My 2 losses were for both less than 10K. So again, that's why I said the $7,800, $7,600 I lost the last 2 weeks is greater than any loss I've ever had in poker for the year at Hollywood Park. So yes, I have won at Hollywood. I've won probably in my lifetime at poker between $100,000 and $125,000. Blackjack, I got so deep into the hole, I would never get out of it. I had a really bad blackjack habit in the mid 90s after I first moved to Los Angeles, and I lost a lot of money card counting. I guess I don't count real well. I stopped playing.
I'm gonna go on a limb and say you were doing something wrong.
Had to be doing something wrong. I used to play with my closest friend who'd come out to we go to Atlantic City in Las Vegas. We got tired of card counting together, just so we would rotate, especially when it got late. So one of us would do the count, so the other one could take some time off. And sometimes we'd be sitting at opposite ends of the table, and we would say something that would let you know what the count was. Okay, so it was kind of fun, because so like if he said I love the Beatles are the Fab Four, so I know that the count's a +4. Stuff like that. If he goes, I heard the Dave Clark 5 drowned the other week, that's -5. So that was kind of fun to do it back and forth that way. Okay. But my friend, who's really smart, but he's out of his mind, I guess, just to make it better for him, like I'd have a decision to make on whether to double down or not, or whether to split my cards. And it depends on the count. And, so I go, Vinny, and then Vinny would go, Queen Elizabeth really enjoyed Napoleons for dessert on the weekend. I go, Vinny? He go, Queen Elizabeth really enjoyed Napoleons for dessert on the weekend. I have no idea. And then he explained to me later, don't you understand? Queen Elizabeth was born in 1684 and blah, 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 blah. He'd be doing some obtuse thing that you couldn't figure out if you had a Mensa degree. I'm trying to figure out whether to double down $100 here, and you're doing limerick riddles. So we stopped doing that. Anyway, I lost so much money that I just play socially now, and I'll never get the money back. And I'm generally, I'm up several $1,000s over the last 10 or 12 years at blackjack. but I had back-to-back years of blackjack where I lost like $15,000 a year. So I'll never get back.
Oh
to
God.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm down like 30 or 40 grand at blackjack.
That's crazy. I mean, there's so many ways to go with this, and this is one of my favorite parts of doing a podcast with someone who has so many stories to tell. But Norm, besides this casual blackjack habit that you now have under control, back to the poker stuff, I'm sort of curious too. As you were playing, all throughout the '80s, at what point did you become aware of the World Series of Poker? At what point did you sort of, I don't know, did the news reach you of like what the main event entailed? And when did you first go to Vegas? Those are the stories that I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's weird. I didn't first go to Atlantic City until 1986, and I'm already 27 or 28 years old then. I went to Vegas one time before I moved to Los Angeles in 1992. So I went with my best friend and his wife in like 1988. It's right after my first wife left me. We're supposed to go as a foursome, and see, it's always something. People wonder why I talk about marriage so much. It's just standard light posts at different points in my life. So we're supposed to take our first trip to Las Vegas, the four of us, and she left me, and we decided, all right, the three of us will go anyway. So my first time in Las Vegas was like 1989 or so. As far as the World Series of Poker goes, Remko, I never had much of an awareness of the World Series of Poker until I was out west in the 90s, and I would watch the ESPN 1 hour or 2 hour broadcast they would do at the main event in the 90s. I watched some of those, but I never paid much attention to it at all. And I didn't even walk into a card room for the first time. You don't like when I went to Las Vegas to play. I went to play blackjack. I didn't walk into a card room in Los Angeles. I moved to Los Angeles in 1992. I didn't walk into a card room in Los Angeles until the end of 1998, and didn't start playing until 1999 and 2000 when my second marriage was ending. See, so the first trip to Las Vegas, my wife left. The first time I started going to a card room, I had left my second wife, which is that's the only woman I ever left in my life. Why would I leave a woman? If they're stupid enough to attach themselves to me, I'm going to kiss the ground every single day of the week. So yeah, 1999 essentially is the first time I stepped into a card room. And so at that point, I'm 40 years old.
Wow. So
that explains a lot about sort of the logic you guys put behind the broadcast as well during these live shows. Remko, where else were you headed with this now?
Well, I was going to say, and this week poker has left him. All these marquee moments in his life, poker has finally left you this week. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. It's like a light post moment.
It is sad.
And my wife's not here. My third wife is back in Maryland for family reasons. But no, it did not leave me. Online poker might have left me before it started. And I'll play online poker again. We actually, if it ever gets going, wSOP.com at various states, I would be happy to represent. But yeah, as far as me playing at unregulated sites and stuff like that, that will never happen again.
I mean, I think that the only fitting story now, as we're moving along on this timeline, is how did it happen that on the first broadcast of the 03 main event, and for many after that, you were referred to, I believe, as tournament player Norman Chad. How did that happen?
I protested that. I lost. The stand-ups in which we did those on-camera things that we taped, incredibly, that first year, we taped all of them after the main event finished at 2 o'clock in the morning. Whenever it finished, whenever Chris Moneymaker beat Sammy Farha, it would have been midnight, that type of thing. We taped those afterwards. And it was a weird time to tape them. And they wrote the lead-in that Lon was going to be saying, Lon McCarron joined by tournament pro, tournament player? I can't remember the exact words. Either.
Yeah. One of those.
I stopped, and I told our producer, the lead producer, Matt Morantz, I said, Matt, I'm not a tournament player. He says, we got to give you some credibility. I said, yeah, but I'm not a tournament player. He says, have you ever played a tournament? I said, actually, last year I played a tournament in Los Angeles. He said, you're a tournament player?
Oh, boy.
Not only that, I literally played one or two tournaments before that, and they weren't no limit hold'em. They're like $200 buy-in tournaments at the bicycle at the Commerce. But so yeah, he wanted to give us more credibility, and I lost that argument. And thankfully, though, in the early days, in particular, I'm doing virtually no analysis. Obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about to begin with. some of them are cringeworthy to watch. All of them are cringeworthy to watch because you say things that you regret. You say things you don't like. But back then, because of my really more lack of knowledge for No Limit Hold'em that I have today, and I still don't have good knowledge in it, it's cringeworthy to say stuff, to hear some of the stuff I say in the first couple of years.
I mean, what's more cringeworthy, though, hearing yourself back or seeing yourself sitting in the audience while play is going on?
Okay, listen, you little Nimrod. I was a TV neophyte, and I'm working the crowd, as I always do. I'm walking around talking to people, and, I didn't know that sitting in the gallery that they were going to, I'd be on camera. And by the way, they missed it. It was fun. They didn't even notice, and they don't miss anything like that. They missed until it aired that for 2 seconds, twice, I believe, that was the first time, that I'm sitting there, watching it while I'm broadcasting ostensibly live. One of the times I might have been sitting next to Money Maker's father. I can't remember that first year. But yeah, so what do you want from me? I didn't know about the cameras. I'm just sitting there doing my job.
Well, the reason I bring this up, and this is probably great for the audience to know, is that as we speak, we are getting the archives ready. We are getting the old stuff ready to be released on PokerGo. So I've been listening to an ungodly amount of Norman Chad and Lon McCarron over the last few weeks. And let me just tell you guys who are watching this, who are obviously fans of Norman, or at least fans of the World Series broadcast. This is all coming to PokerGo very soon. We'll have more information on that. But honestly, Norm, going through this whole library of content, what I missed the most is all these prelim events, all these final tables, where it did seem as though there was a bit more wiggle room to have some fun with it, as opposed to the main event, which, felt a little bit more like a sporting event. And I'm thinking of, Marcel Lusk and Joe Awada, and I'm thinking of Men Win spitting out the beer all over the table, stuff like that. Do you miss that sort of style of commentary, which seemed a bit more focused on the humor than on the poker?
I don't remember that the bracelet events, you might be right about that, because I haven't watched those bracelet events ever again, probably. But I loved doing the bracelet events. I loved the idea that we would do more than the main event. And my idea, which was rejected by my ESPN cohorts, was that we showed, like, each event is the world championship of that event. We have the world champion, the 10K Omaha High Low, the 10K PLO, the 10K, all these different, it leads up to the main event then. So that's the first thing I wanted to do, and they disagreed with that. I said that's how we would market it. And then I wanted to show mixed games. And they stopped inviting me to meetings, because after we had one that went direct to home video. I forget which one it was. It was either Deuce to 7, Triple Draw, or Raz. One of those two did not show on ESPN. It went direct to home video. They didn't want to show it. They claimed it was just all these things were too confusing. It had nothing to do with ratings, by the way. I always read things about the ratings were so low on the bracelet events. It had nothing to do with ratings. It had to do with cost more than anything else. And I loved showing the other games. I thought we could build, the World Championship of Stud High Low, the World Championship of Omaha. We could build those games by showing them on ESPN. They disagreed with me. I brought it up every year for 2 or 3 years. They said, Norman, you're really wasting our time on these conference calls. You're not being invited to the next planning session. I said, fine, you're going to kill me. I'll go bowl.
I mean, I do want to thank you, though, because of probably your encouragement, some of these were filmed, and some of these are actually iconic moments. I mean, like Ivy winning a PLO bracelet, or, like that one Marshall Lewis thing I refer to, those things was 7-card stud, and there was other shows like Triple Draw and stuff. I totally understand why we're not doing it anymore, because for the general audience, it's probably way too confusing. But as a huge poker nerd and mixed game fan, I love the fact that this footage exists, because otherwise it would have just been, a list of results on Hendon Mob. We would have never had any backstory to many of these people. Also, for the people watching at home, if you use the promo code POKER30 on PokerGo, you get $30 off the annual subscription. So anticipate that. Tons and tons of World Series of Poker footage, classic stuff coming to PokerGo real soon. And then, Brent, this ties into our new show, which also will be on PokerGo. Is it tomorrow? I think it's tomorrow on PokerGo.
Oh, no, the new show just came out 30 minutes ago.
30 minutes ago.
PokerGo right now, 2020 hindsight with Matt Berkey. It's going to be a very, very in-depth, brutally honest look. Berkey's going to break down some of the most elite final tables and World Series of Poker moments and episodes. Norman Chad, you were on the call for a lot of those. We drowned out your voice, and Matt Berkey's going to come in and actually say some reasonable things that maybe we can learn from.
Yeah, well, subtitle whatever Matt's saying so I can understand it.
That's a great point. He uses a lot of big words, which I'm glad you said that, because along with this show, we have a glossary that was made by Matt Berkey that defines all of these giant words that I don't even know what they mean that will go along with the show for all the subscribers. I'm so happy you said that, Norman.
I'm glad I led you into that, and I didn't expect that you would know what they meant. Either a JUCO degree usually doesn't carry you that far out,
Right.
and even in Main Street America, it's hard to get by with a JUCO degree.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent attempt there. Tyler Champley in the chat says, Norm, what are you looking for in your next wife?
Okay, I'm so glad that Tony doesn't watch this because she doesn't like those type of references. You do remind me. So I'm not looking for my next wife. I hope that Tony, who I love, is my wife till death do us part, even though till death do us part might involve, homicide with one of us killing each other. But I do hope we get to the end. But you did remind me that my second wife, and I was married very briefly that second time, she overheard a sports radio show I was doing. I had just gotten married. And I came up with a joke off the top of my head like 2 weeks earlier, and I used it again because I liked it so much. They said, "Congratulations." They said, "We heard you just got married again." And I said, "Yeah, it's always been my goal to be married 3 times in my life. So I got to get in and out of the second one as quickly as I can." So that's my wife, second wife, overheard, and she was in tears because she thought there was something in me that actually really meant that. She was wrong, but she was right because I did leave her very early on, but I was really just joking. I don't think that was a subconscious thing coming out. I just like the idea that, I want to be married 3 times, so I got to get out of the second one as soon as I can. So I will never do that again. So this is my final spouse.
That's it. We're all done with Tony.
I mean, this reminds me, Norm, of the sentiments that you sometimes display in various Twitter DM inboxes, or even publicly sometimes towards the likes of Brent Hanks, Jeff Platt, Drew Amato, myself. Now that you're confessing to the fact that the 3 times married in a lifetime was one of the goals, I'm starting to doubt the fact whether we're dealing with comedy or things of a more serious nature.
Actually, Twitter is a difficult animal. I wish I was never on, and I wish I was never on Twitter, and I got on Twitter by accident. And I know there's a lot of good to Twitter, but the downside for me definitely more than negates the upside. But one of the tough signs in Twitter is that sarcasm and nuance and stuff like that sometimes is hard to translate on Twitter or on texts. So with you people, some people are confused, and I've actually asked you two whether you want me to keep doing it. I've asked Jeff Platt as well. People that I like and that I like a lot, I will have essentially what is a false or fake Twitter beef or Twitter war with. I'm just always pounding into them. So you, in PokerWise, you just mentioned most of them, Drew Amato, and you, and Mr. Hanks, and Jeff Platt, and David Tuckman are the 5 that come to my mind PokerWise. I might be missing somebody else in there. But some people take them seriously, and they often, I have a fake Twitter beef with Jeremy Schaap of ESPN, one of the finest sports broadcast journalists ever. And when I've done that, I get messages from people that, who attacks Jeremy Schaap? I mean, why are you out of your mind? Why are you so hostile? Why do you hate everybody? And I've told Jeremy, I got to stop this. People just don't keep doing it. I love it. It's my favorite part of the week. But people misinterpret stuff on Twitter, so I'm thinking twice about it.
It's the same thing for Brent and I think. I get DMs very regularly from people, "Why are you being so mean to Norman Chat?" Or, "Wow, are you guys really feuding?" And at that point, I want to take the joke to the next level and like pour some extra gasoline on it. But people really seem worried about us, which I think makes it even funnier.
I just don't take Twitter very seriously. That's why I speak in GIF.
Yeah, you only speak in GIF, and you have the same library of 6 GIFs.
That's right.
That's good. Well, you can expand. I'm sure there's thousands, if not millions, of GIFs out there. You can expand.
I don't like the other ones. I only like those 6.
Yeah, you like the 6 a lot.
Norm, the only serious topic I wanted to discuss today on the podcast, and I promise it's the only one, the 2020 World Series of Poker was announced yesterday that it's been postponed to the fall. We're still unsure about the dates. How have you sort of been following along with this? Do you still get super excited for the World Series of Poker sort of leading up to it? And do you think it will happen? And when do you think it'll happen? And of course, as an epidemiologist yourself, you can probably say something very clever about this.
Okay. To almost all your 6 questions you just put there in less than 50 words, my answer is I don't know. Right. In fact, I was in contact. I'm usually in a good deal of contact with Ty Stewart, who runs the World Series of Poker. Just in contact with him a couple of weeks ago. I emailed back and forth with him. And actually, I was asking about the World Series of Poker, and uncharacteristically for Ty, he was very cryptic. He told me, we're looking at all options. It's all crazy like here now? Because I was wondering why they hadn't postponed yet more than anything else, because it seemed that then they had to postpone, and I was wondering why they were waiting so late. The Tide told me virtually nothing. So, they had a bunch. What I do know is they had a bunch of less than optimal options in front of them, as they still do. A combination of the calendar, combination of live and online. And plus, they don't know what the epidemiology, how the virus is going to play out. So, they're hoping for November is the time that they've said. And again, I don't know what version of the World Series of Poker we will see. November is actually nice enough, Las Vegas weather-wise, that if we still have a virus problem, I believe they could do the whole thing at Sam's Club parking lot, the one at Rainbow Springs. It's a huge parking lot. And you can set up all the tables there outdoors, just like the final Stu Unger main event final table in 97 on Fremont Street. But you're going to have 2,000 players outdoors. Sam's Club has free parking. So they could do it outdoors if they want to. Otherwise, I have no idea what they're doing.
Seems like a viable solution to this. I was sort of hoping for Brent to jump in there to say something witty on top of that. But yeah, I mean, no one really knows. I just wanted to sort of see where you're at.
The last person that's going to know is going to be Norman Chad. I'm actually surprised that Ty emailed you back in the first place. But, I'm curious as to how this is going to unfold with television, right? With ESPN. This is right in the heart of football season.
That was one of their other options. That one of their other considerations that's really bad. When they have, it's amazing the last 3 years that we've gotten 12 to 14 consecutive nights in prime time, essentially on ESPN or ESPN2. That's because it's in July and they have a programming hole. There is no programming hole of that nature like the rest of the year. So I don't know what the ESPN aspect of is live. I have no idea. That's one of the problems with moving it. One of the problems with moving it was convention time and at the Rio, which is booked up the rest of the year in those rooms. So there's a lot of other elements. And of course, if you go online with the whole thing, you have a certain amount of people who can't play. Most people can't play worldwide, certainly in the U.S. And you also lose the financial benefit of bringing people into the Rio for people booking rooms, restaurants, other gambling. So there's so many elements they have to consider. It's really a conundrum for them to figure out what to do with it.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that. But Matt Berkey had a tweet. Keep bringing up his name for whatever reason. He said he hopes that the wSOP remains in this fall window, and I don't think that's wise. I really don't. I think it's got to continue over the summer months for all those reasons that you just stated, and I'm glad that you touched on that.
They've always, again, for financial reasons, the World Series of Poker before it became really huge, used to be played in May when it was at Binion's. It was in May for a while. Then it got moved to early June for the purposes of the Rio, because of hotel capacity and a light time of year. They want to fill that place in July. For that, that's the time of year in Las Vegas in which they have the lowest occupancy, those hot summer months. So for that alone, they would keep it in the summer. For the ESPN window alone, they would keep it in the summer. There's other reasons they might move it to November, as Matt Berkey wants, but I don't know what they would be.
Valid question in the chat from Christopher George. I think you're probably very familiar with Christopher George. He says, can Norman speak about what he's doing during the main event, walking around in the Rio all day, and also why he gives out cursed starbursts?
This is the toxic nature of this country now. The nasty questions come from everywhere. And Chris George is a really nice guy. He's a very good mixed games player. And I've gotten the opportunity to play with Chris in the summer a lot. I don't know why, aren't there questions, asking about, like Daisy's greatest accomplishments while I knew her? Instead, it's, what am I walking around giving away cursed starbursts? First of all, I'm walking around in the early days because we were looking for stories for the post-produced telecasts. And people sometimes walk up to me and go, hey, I got 6 fingers on my left hand and I built the Hoover Dam. I go, oh, you're probably a pretty interesting story. And so I tell the producers. We don't do that the same way anymore, and we don't even have the post-produced things anymore. So now I still walk around to meet people and get to know people. And I started giving out the starbursts before we went live by accident. I used to give out starbursts when I was playing because at the World Series, even when I sat down at a table, it was morgue-like. People were not in a good mood. So anytime I offered them candy or food, it kind of loosened up the table. That's how that started accidentally. Then I decided I start giving them to people, and they tell me, and they would come up to me and say, after you gave me a starburst, I won like 5 straight hands. That gave me the idea to walk around and give people starbursts, get their story, tell them, you want a starburst? Yeah, what's your name? What's your occupation? And now I can put your name on the air. and follow you for the rest of the series. So that's how that worked. And then if he wants to talk about unlucky starbursts, then tell me why, when I give all these out on day 1 and day 2, that they cash like a 25% rate when they're only paying 15%. How about that, Mr. George, who's no longer a professional poker player, because he couldn't win in the grind, could he?
I think it makes a ton of sense. Chris George, obviously, hanging up his entire failure to the starburst is quite a big thing to do for him.
He never got one. He stopped coming full time, and maybe if he got one, he would have had better luck. But I love going out to starburst now, seriously, because it's, I get to meet dozens of more people, and sometimes you find some interesting ones, and I get to root for them. That's the greatest thing about the main event, is rooting for people who you didn't even know 24 hours earlier, and you become like best friends with them when you talk to them, and then they make it to the next day and the next day. And the worst thing is just the same thing like with a dog. George Carlin used to say, like, it's a tiny disaster. The moment you buy a dog, you purchase a dog, it's going to end badly, because they're going to pass away before you do. So the moment I get close to all these people, obviously 99.9% of them are going to get knocked out, before the final table, for instance. And you just, you live and die by them. And when they leave, it's like a part of you leaves. It's just kind of weird.
Including Jeff Platt. I believe you gave him a starburst in 2015, and he did not win, Norman.
No, he was different. I have a sleeper pick of the year every year. That's really hard to be a sleeper pick. And he was my sleeper pick last year, the year before. I lose track of time. Okay. That's hard to give out the sleeper pick. Okay. I showed confidence in him, and he didn't even survive. I think he barely survived day 1. He was gone in a hurry and didn't seem to care.
He plays pretty, he's not great, stick to the broadcasting sort of thing with Jeff, although his game has improved. Oh, a very nice comment from another guy in the chat. Ian Sheriffs tunes into every single one of our podcasts. Said, Norman Chat is so funny. Tell him I said thank you for the commentary over the years. So there you go, Norman. You've got one positive comment in here.
Thank Ian for that, because again, it's been a lot of negative energy coming here. And I just kind of get tired of it. I mean, I'm getting older, and in fact, where's my copy of? See, I got my latest copy of AARP. You're on to read this. Look at this, AARP. 9 reasons to see your eye doctor now. Do you love dogs? Oh, I'm really going to turn to that one. Do you love dogs? Page 56. I really want to read that. Do you love dogs? Page 56. And why smart people get scammed. I just got scammed at an unregulated poker site. So I don't need any of the information in here. Okay, I don't need 9 reasons to see an eye doctor. I have to see an eye doctor. I just have one. I have bad vision. I'm not gonna go look at the Love Dogs photo special. I'm not in the mood, and I know smart people get scammed.
Are you sure this is not the next sort of magazine you can actually contribute to with some real life stories and experiences on the Ukrainian bagman, for instance? Moving on, Norm. One thing that I always found funny about the broadcast is your relationship or lack thereof, which I've never really gotten quite sure of, with Phil Ivey. You always reference him, as the phenom, the guy, the Tiger Woods of poker, all that sort of stuff. But have you actually ever sat down with Phil? Have you interacted with him? And was he ever aware of your praise for him on the broadcast?
With Phil, you never know, because that poker face he keeps with other people, except his closest friends. He's hilarious with his closest friends, and he's got an incredible sense of humor, but he's pretty stone-faced the rest of the time. So actually, going back to when we did the Tournament of Champions, which was an invite thing with like 10 players, no crowd. It's like $1 million, one winner, no deals. We have to do interviews with players beforehand to set up a feature. And so I was with Phil before the interview, and I was talking to him for the first time. So this is going back a long time. This is going back to like 2005. And I told him, because he's very quiet at the table. I told him that if more of your personality came out the table, you'd just be a rock star. Because you're such a good player, and you have the personality that I know that's your style to be yourself. But if you just gave more, because I've interviewed, I interviewed him once after he won a bracelet event that we did. And before we sat down for the bracelet event, I said, Phil, do me a favor, man. I'm going to ask you 2 or 3 questions. They use like one sound bite. Give me that Phil Ivey thing. Don't give me your stone face thing. Give me your best 5. Sure, man, I'll do it. Whatever. When he went on the air, he was just, 2-word answers. I got one answer at him that we used actually, which was that he thought he could win. I forgot the number. He thought he could win 25 bracelets. But so I told Phil, just you would get more endorsements. You do more. He just pretty much ignored me because he's just going to do what he's going to do. So I'm never sure if he's aware that I pick him every year. I think he would be. I'm never sure that he became dead to me when he stopped coming to the World Series. But to show you his great sense of humor, I got to play with him at probably Stud High Low or an Omaha event 5 or 6 years ago. And he's got his headsets on. And I'm in seat 1. He's like in seat 5. And I am riffing on him. He's got his headsets on. I'm doing left and right, saying, this guy, this is Phil Ivey, like, he won't talk to me. He knows I talk about him. He knows I make fun of him. He knows I do this. He's dead to me now. He's blah, 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 blah. I'm like doing this for like 3 straight minutes. The table's cracking up or something. And then I say one other thing, Phil, Phil, the thing about Phil is that he's blah, 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 blah. And Phil takes off his left headset like this and goes, "Are you talking?" And he puts it back on, and then the whole table just died because I don't know if he heard a word I said or he's just incredible. So yeah, I love playing with him that time. But my short answer is I have no idea. I hardly ever talked to him. I do since I got along with the greatest fans in poker history.
Oh yeah, Pat and Mel.
I'm sorry, what?
Pat and Mel.
Pat and Mel Humphreys. We had that connection. And so we talked about them a lot. And then they were giving me, since they didn't come the last couple of years, they were giving me messages to pass on to Phil, and they wanted updates on how Phil was doing. And then Phil went to visit when she was sick in the hospital. And so, yeah, I've stayed in contact with him over the Humphreys, but otherwise I hardly ever talk to Phil.
I think it's also probably good that barrier still exists because Phil Ivey never sort of breaks the Phil Ivey character, and he's the same with everyone, I guess, in some kind of way. But hearing Ivey's stories is always one of my favorites, and this alone perfectly shows the kind of guy that he is. The headphone thing, it's just perfect. Are there players from those early years, from those final tables, that you built relationships with, or was it more so you roaming the tables in the early goings and then you sort of took a back seat as the tournament developed?
A little both. Again, I met a lot of people. Like Bernard Lee is one ridiculous example. Bernard Lee is one of those guys I met roaming, and he told me about his family. He almost didn't come to the World Series that year because his wife had been sick, and she said, "No, you go." And he kept, he was one of the first ones who kept his whole hook was that he had the family on. He had the pictures of his kids on there, and he kissed them after a big hand and stuff like that. And Bernard was a great story. And then Bernard ended up becoming essentially almost a poker pro. That's the type of guy that I met early on, where I'd stay close with, and that doesn't happen. Again, it was a much smaller community then, even though it was still several, 2,000 people. When Bernard played that year, it was like 2,500 people or something. But when it comes 7,000, 8,000 people, and it gets a lot harder to get close to anybody, especially anybody who becomes part of the poker community regularly. It might happen with a guy like Dennis Phillips, who became part of the poker community regularly after he was just a trucking executive. But it's really hard to do now. And then with our live telecasts, I don't even get to roam the main event for the whole day. I can roam for a couple of hours before we have to go on the air. So I don't get to see the same people anymore.
Great question again from Christopher George in the chat as we're on this conversation. Who has been your all-time favorite player to cover and commentate on?
Well, not Christopher George, but we've hardly ever had him on air. But I think he's working full-time now. But if he's not, if you're still watching, Chris, right when you get work, because I'm sure you'll find something. And my favorite player all time, a lot of the early guys I much more enjoyed covering and talking with, and they would talk to you more because they weren't the young gun internet guys who just look at me as understandably as a fraud and as fraudulent and knowing nothing about what they're doing. All that's certainly the last thing's correct. I have no idea what they're doing. I have trouble. I can play the meta game maybe doing checkers, but I can't play the meta game doing no limit hold'em. So the earlier guys were actually, they talk to you a lot. And they're, like Barry Greenstein, Howard Lederer, Miami John Cernuto, who I've become very close with, and we don't give a lot of time to, but he's the all-time Hendon Mob cash game winner. He's won more, whatever. He's got 400 or 500 recorded cashes. Guys like that always had a backstory because they got into poker a little later. Eric Seidel, who was on Wall Street. So they all had backstories that were interesting. Miami John Cernuto was an air traffic controller. So I enjoyed those guys in the earlier years. It's harder to get close. You're just not going to get really close to Daniel Coleman, in my estimation. I'm just going to not be as close with all, with the, and I know them. I'm not going to be as close with the Justin Bonimos and the Bryn Kennys and the Fader Holtzes. And some of them are really, really nice, but, I'm a generation removed from them at least. And they just don't have any backstory to speak of.
Right. All right. We're going to get into the closing minutes of this podcast. About 10 more minutes left for you guys in the chat. Please drop in your questions right now. Christopher George is doing a great job asking all these questions. And he says he's watching in between his McDonald's shifts. So hopefully his LTE holds up on that cheap plan that he's paying for.
He doesn't have any connections with Burger King? This just came today through my mail slot.
No sponsors on the podcast though, but they can still reach out to us. For people who are watching, don't forget to like this video. It helps us tremendously to land big guests in the future, such as Norman Chad and perhaps people sort of on his level. Norm, we have two sort of favorite items here on the show that we always do. They're both silly and they're both a little bit weird. The first one is mine. It's called 555 questions. I have an Excel sheet with 555 random questions. It's just a sheet that I've been adding to over time as I find silly questions to answer. And normally I never prepare any questions for any interviews, but in this case, you get to name 5 numbers. I'm going to scroll down the list and ask the corresponding questions. So Norm, give me your first number and I will ask the corresponding question.
17.
17. Okay, I can see that from here. Who was your childhood hero?
I had 3 childhood heroes, and they all disappointed me. Woody Allen, who I stopped watching his films after he decided to bed his longtime lover's adopted daughter, and thought there was nothing wrong with that. So Woody, who's a comic genius, great movies. He was one of my childhood heroes. John Wooden. My father went to UCLA. I worship John Wooden. I actually sent him a copy of his book, and he signed it for me and sent it back to me. This is when I was a kid. That's tremendous. And I still love John Wooden, but as it turns out, he was cheating just like everybody else in college athletics. They had a guy who took care of it. They had a bag man that took care of everything. That's a guy named Sam Gilbert, who was sort of the booster who took care of all the athletes' needs. And John Wooden didn't have to know anything about it. Okay, he knew plenty about it. So he disappointed me. And the one you all really know would be Hubert Humphrey, who was my political hero when I was growing up. And he actually ran for president against Richard Nixon. And I loved Hubert Humphrey, but as it turned out, and he wasn't dirty, but he was just as, I won't say corruptible, but as whatever you need to do to be a politician as everybody else in Congress and everybody else in the Senate. So all 3 of them let me down. So I have no more heroes. Wow.
It was almost like we prepared you for that answer. And I think it was a tremendous answer. Give me another number.
Because, Woody is still in the news all the time, and John Wooden lived to be whatever, like 100 or close to 100, and passed away a few years ago. So, and I moved to Los Angeles, and he's obviously an icon here. So I think about Woody and John Wooden a lot. I don't think about Hubert Humphrey that much.
All right, give me your second number.
31.
31. This is funny. This kind of applies. Are you a gambling man? And what was the first wager you ever made?
I am not a gambling man. I mean, I know people have a lot of gamble in them. I do not. I'm not a gambling man. I don't like prop bets. Every prop bet I make now, which has nothing to do with poker, I lose to my best friend. He'll bet $20 for me when I'm in a restaurant about somebody or something. I always lose to him. So I'm not a gambling man. The first bet I ever made, I do not recall. Again, I would have been making sports bets starting in 1983. I don't recall the first sport I ever made. I just know I had winning weeks. Like it was rigged, like online. I had winning weeks at first until I had the 1 week where I didn't cash in the bet.
All right, what's number 3?
Let's go to 49.
All right, you're staying close. That makes it easy for me. This is interesting. If you had a warning label, what would it say?
First of all, that warning label would take up several legal pads. It would say a lot, okay? Do not speak to me in the morning. Do not text, email, or call me before 11 a.m. Pacific time ever. Don't speak to unless spoken to 24 hours a day, because I'm in an ornery mood most of the time. So why would you want to provoke, don't wake up the sleeping tiger or whatever. See, it'd be all the stuff, just pretty much leave me alone, which is actually why the quarantine is not much different than what I usually do, because I do stay at home. I've never worked. I have not been in an office since I left the Washington Post in 1989. So I haven't worked in an office in 30 years. So just keep your distance, and maybe once in a while that sweet part of me will come out. Sometimes Valentine's Day, sometimes at the National Arboretum, I'm really friendly. I've never been to the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C., but it's a lot of plants, and I get in a great mood.
Wow, that's terrific. Some might say you invented social distancing. It's just a great way to stay level-headed. Give me your fourth number.
76.
76. When's the last time you quit a job and why?
I actually get fired or laid off more than I quit a job. The last food service job I quit, because I used to work a lot of food service jobs, waiter, busboy, dishwasher. I was hired for a deli around the corner where I lived in the early 80s after I graduated college. And I was hired to be a waiter there. And because I needed to work, I was working as a stand-up comedian. On the first day I come in, they tell me, we have a problem. We don't need you waiting tables. We need you working behind the counter. They had like a counter with 12 seats, and working behind the counter is a different job. You had to actually like prepare coffee and do stuff like that. So besides the fact that I was not qualified to do any of that stuff, besides the fact that it was an incredible lunch rush that came in asking, where's my food? Where's my food? And I didn't have their food. The owner of the place, whose name bore the name Barron's Deli, Mr. Barron, came up to me when somebody got a pastrami sandwich and said, let me get extra pickles with it. The second time I did that to somebody, he says, when you give extra pickles to them, you have to charge 25 cents, like 2 extra pickles. Like, I didn't know that. He says, you got to put 25 cents on his bill. So I'm not going to put 25 cents on his bill. I'll pay the 25 cents, but I'm not going to charge the guy 25 cents for 2 extra pickles. He goes, no, you got to put it on his bill. I go, I'll pay the money, Mr. Barron. Here's the quarter. I gave him the quarter. So then we had a problem a little later with the tea. Some guy wanted a black tea, and I didn't fix it right, and Mr. Barron got mad at me. And then I had on like an apron or whatever you have on as a guy, not an apron, whatever you have on your service thing. It was getting unbelievable to me. I was like 2 hours into the shift. Everyone was yelling at me. It was my first day. I didn't know what I was doing. So I did something that I cannot believe I did. Again, I was walking distance away from where I lived. It's like a 5-minute walk. I went back to the back end of the restaurant, not where customers come in, the back end where there's storage. There is a door back there, like with one of those bars that you would open this door. And I was so mad, I took off the damn thing. I threw my work clothes onto the floor, and with my 2 arms, I pushed the door open as far as I could, except it was locked. So I hurt my arms because I hit the lock, and it took me a while to get the lock, and I finally got the thing open, and I opened it up. It was really sunny, and I ran all the way home. I was like 25 years old, 24 years old at the time. I ran all the way home. That was I worked for 2 hours. I did not get paid. I quit that job.
If you had not mentioned graduating college, I would have thought you were 16 years old.
Yeah, it was after college. It was a year or two after college when I was working as a stand-up comedian, and I needed income.
All right. You and Mr. Barron still have a relationship to this day?
No, it's weird. As it turned out, I graduated high school with Mr. Barron's son, who was so I was not close to his son. And Barron's Deli stayed there for about another 10 years. But no, we do not have a relationship to this day.
Not one of your heroes growing up. I have one last number. Then we're going to take some chat questions, and then Brent has one final game to wrap this all up. Give me that final number.
101. I'm saying 101 because that's the number of bracelet events that were scheduled this summer at the World Series. 87 in Las Vegas and 14 online bracelets. 101 was the number. I just want to let David Tuckman know that because he didn't know what the number was yesterday when someone asked him, and yet he still answered the question.
The most incredible thing is that I believe when I first started following the World Series of Poker, and of course I'm super young, so it wasn't even that long ago, that I believe there were like 40 events, and now we're at 101. Anyway, that's probably never going to stop. We're probably going to have 300 events in a few years. All right, let's see. What would the title of your autobiography be?
Well, the title of my collection of sports columns, which I wrote 25 years ago or so, was Hold On, Honey, I'll Take You to the Hospital at Halftime, which was based on a true story. And I'm sure it was one of the 37 reasons my first wife left me. The title of my biography, though, it would probably be one of the titles I wanted for my columns. When I went to work at the National Sports Daily, they asked me to name the column, like, what are we going to call the sports TV column? And I gave them a bunch of names. And one of them was using words I shouldn't use, but it really reflected my attitude in general in that column, and my general when I'm dealing with people who are just always, something's wrong with them in America. So the column name, and I hope you bleep this because I don't use bad words usually, but the autobiography would be what I wanted my column name to be, which was Fuck Me, Fuck You.
I like that. Very good.
That was my favorite column name.
I love that. I think that's great. Brent, do we have any more questions from the chat?
Yeah, let me grab a few out of the chat. Let's see. Mitch Heck says, would Norman play 510 PLO at my home game in Malibu? Lots of celebs already, so it looks like you've got an invite to play some Pot Limit Omaha with Mitch. Norm, you in?
That's nice. I like PLO. 510's that's a serious game. I don't know. I hardly ever get invited to the Hollywood home games that are prevalent out here. So I'd think about it because PLO, because almost all no limit hold'em. But 510, that's pretty serious change.
There you go, Mitch. So maybe from Norman. Brian Young says, do you think that live poker will have a huge overhaul as far as safety measures are concerned going forward?
I don't know what the future of anything is. Like I heard that the governor of California tell us last week that even when we start to transition back to normal, we're not going to like the new normal at first. When you go to a restaurant, your server will have a mask on. They will take your temperature at the door. He wasn't kidding. And the tables will be well spaced. And then eventually maybe we'll return to the life we know. I don't know if we ever return to a life that we know. And so in poker is like ground zero on this about what do you do in poker and live poker and when do people come back and feel safe? I have no idea.
Poker, no clue whatsoever.
Poker and bowling, the two most sanitary things to do, possibly.
See, you can open bowling. If you didn't have bowling shoes, which is a scam to begin with, bowling shoes, obviously, the rental bowling shoes you can't use. But you can open up a bowling alley, and you know how bowling alleys have 2 lanes per, whatever cluster, and just play. Everybody plays 1 lane per cluster, so you have every other lanes being played. You have social distance, and then if you wore gloves with the bowling balls, I think you could actually bowl, or tight gloves. I don't know if you release the ball as well. But yeah, I think you could actually open a bowling alley and have social distancing.
But then are we going to see gloves and face masks for poker? Because we all love to rag on players who cover their faces. Shout out to Christoph Vogel saying, but it does seem as though this might be starting a new era where players are saying, well, I'm covering my face for health reasons. And what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, well, actually, there's been very few rules on the headphones, the hoodies, and the sunglasses. Some do have rules on that now. Yeah, you're bringing up a legitimate point that now they are given cause to come on in with that stuff and wear masks and whatever. And maybe that would be the standard anyway, because of, this virus is so insidious. We don't know when it leaves and we don't know how to prevent it from coming back. So that might become the standard.
There you have it. So great answer there from Norman Shad. Brian Young, great question. Let's go with this one. Robbie Straczynski. Has Norman ever gotten tipped by any players from the main event or elsewhere for having done great commentary, helping you make that player famous?
No, except, I wish I could remember his name. His kid's name is Jacob Stein. He worked at Hollywood Park, and his father made a deep run. He's from Ohio. He's a horse trainer. His father made a deep run in whatever year, and we never really got him on the TV much. But he was one of the guys I meet early. I was backing, hoping he did well. He was a great personality. He'd buy drinks for the whole table. He was just having the time of his life. One of those guys. He made a really deep run. I don't think he made it on TV. After he cashed for whatever he cashed in 5 figures, he gave me, and I could not, I gave it back to him. He gave it to me. It was like my grandma, how your grandmother used to try to keep putting money in your pocket right here. No, grandma, I don't need the $20. She puts it in there so you finally say yes. This man was so generous. He gave me, it was several $100s. He just came up to me after a celebration. He bought champagne for everybody after he cashed. And he handed me like $500 bills. I said, no, I can't do that. I can't believe I can't remember his name. I feel so bad. We went back and forth for a while. And I felt guilty because he made me keep it. I kept it. And so it felt like I was a dirty cop or something. But yes, he gave me several $100s because of all the care I showed him during the main event. And I don't even think we got him on hardly at all.
So it wasn't Curtis Reistad?
No. Oh, jeez. No, it was not.
That one went over my head. Who was that?
First of all, I thought he said Curtis Rice's dad at first.
No,
but he didn't. He said Curtis Rice's dad, which brings. Well, you were just watching some main events. Yeah. See, I don't have a good memory, but that man I remember. No, it was not Curtis Rice's dad.
Now I'm excited for when we get the wSOP Classic material all up on PokerGo. I got to dive in and find out the story.
By the way, if you want to see a great personality, if you ever get the old U.S. Poker Championship from 2004, this guy, Lance Funston, who's still around, was a businessman. He made poker more fun than anybody I'd ever seen. He is so much fun to watch during those telecasts. Curtis Rystad. But yeah, if you ever get to see the USPC, the year that I forgot who won.
Alex Jacob won it one year. I know that. I remember.
Yeah, it might be the year Alex Jacob won it. I actually, to be honest, that's where I met Alex. So,
it was. Oh, wow, I thought he went way deeper. I just Googled this. We already have this on PokerGo, so people can watch this right now. 2014 main event, Kyle Karanen and Curtis Rystad. Honestly, just unbelievable. Like, you have to watch it. Main event, he finished in 100th place. In my mind, he was like the final three tables.
I didn't realize he got that deep, actually. But yeah, I remember with the interaction between those two. Yeah, that's so much fun.
Yeah. All right, Brent, continue. What else?
One more segment for the show before we wrap things up. Norman, are you familiar with word association?
I mean, I do words for a living. I hardly ever have to do word association. But yes, I'm familiar with
that as a yes. Take that as a yes. Here's how this game is going to work, called Snap Call. I'm going to say a name that you certainly will recognize, or personality, celebrity figure. And as quickly as you can, I want you to give me the poker player that comes to mind. And it could be based on physical looks. It could be based on their demeanor, how they handle themselves. You get the idea. Yeah?
Unfortunately, yeah. I was hoping it was a different type of association. I have to think of a poker player that comes to mind after you mention a celebrity or a well-known person.
You got it. It's very simple. Very simple. We're going to put you in the spot here.
Let me also just say, Brent, before we dig in, Norm, Brent is so proud of this segment. He's just brimming with pride. So, Brent, take this
segment. Yeah, and I think you're going to be perfect at it. Okay, number one, and I know that you're a different generation than all of us in chat, and of course Remko and I. So I went back a little bit. Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley.
Yeah, Elvis Presley. Give me the poker player that reminds you of Elvis Presley.
Robert Williamson III.
There you go. Easy game, huh? Robert Williamson III. That is your.
I didn't say it was an easy game, and I didn't say I liked it.
Number two, Madonna.
Madonna.
Yeah, Madonna, Norman.
Madonna. Jeez, Madonna. I'll go with Lacey Jones. You might not even know.
Of course, that's Keith Gibson's wife. Yes, Lacey Jones. Great answer. Number three, Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they're your favorite football team. Quarterback Ben Roethlisberger.
Only for the Mountain Mound part and no other part, Todd Brunson.
Todd. Perfect. He's going to love that answer, no doubt. Number four. I love this. I'm curious. Cal Ripken Jr.
One of my favorites, Cal Ripken Jr.
Yep.
Love Cal Ripken. God, I could have gone with Doral Brunson Jr. I was thinking about it. But I used Todd. But Cal Ripken Jr. He's a grinder. 2,500 straight games or whatever. He's a grinder. He's there every day.
That's right.
So I'm going to go with, even though he missed last year for personal reasons, I'm going to go with Mike Leah.
Mike Leah. Cal
Wow.
Jr. Wow, you even did the whole the head thing too. This is good. Very good.
On the clock, grinding every event, doesn't miss anything. And last year he had the birth of his first kids. Congratulations. But yeah, he's Cal Ripken Jr.
That's a great answer. And that leads me to number five, and I'm very excited about this one. Dave Portnoy.
I'm glad you're excited about that one. Dave Portnoy?
Yeah, Dave Portnoy of poker.
Yeah. I'll be nice to Dave and just go with Devilfish Elliott.
I think that's very reasonable.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, that's good. That's great.
That's reasonable.
There you go. That wraps up the Snap Call segment.
And I do want to now that Brent has brought this up, refer to the fact that even though you guys are by no means on good terms, you do have the same taste in pizza, which makes me believe that this is something that I need to really experience. The New Haven style, Norm. Please explain to the audience your fascination and addiction with pizza, and how much weight have we gained during the quarantine?
Actually, pizza is my favorite food. Portnoy and I've only seen 5 or 6 of his pizza reviews. And one of the first ones I saw, he went to one of my favorite pizza places in America, Santillo's Brick Oven Pizzeria in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And he gave it like a 7.7 or something. This is often rated the #1 pizza in New Jersey. Anybody's top 100 list it's on. A 7.7 on a scale of 10. And he had given Chuck E. Cheese is like a 5.8. So there's no way that Chuck E. Cheese is a 5.8 and this place is. He actually went back and he got so much blowback. He changed the Santillo's rating to like 9.7 or something. But so I love pizza, and Al Santillo actually just sent through a express courier service pizza to Maryland from New Jersey to my wife a couple of days ago. He has somebody comes up from Washington, picks up like 40 pizzas, and then drives them back and delivers them to different DC area people. So we paid to get some Al Santillo pizza this past week. I love pizza, but I have not, as it turns out, I don't want to end on a down note, but because of the loss of my dog, I have been in a massive depression. I have not been eating. I've actually lost 6 or 7 pounds in the last 2 weeks alone since my dog passed away. But the only sustenance I've had is having good pizza. And so the New Haven pizza that I was talking to you about before we were on the air, Zupardi's, one of the famous New Haven pizza places, they deliver, so you can order it online. And a friend of mine sent me 6 of those pizzas for $75. And so I've had 3 of those already. And that's comfort food. It's so good.
Well, Norm, I also don't want to add on a sad note, but we all miss Daisy. I think that Daisy had a lot of fans. Most people following you on Twitter probably followed you because of Daisy. So, let's just say that everyone misses Daisy. And
I appreciate it. Actually, Daisy, when I do Daisy videos or pictures, I got more response on her than anything I ever tweeted out. So Daisy actually was, a 4-legged superstar.
Absolutely. For the people watching this video, there's a few things you should know. First and foremost, use the promo code POKER30 to take $30 off the annual subscription of PokerGO. You can watch Hindsight 2020, 2020 Hindsight, whatever you want to call it, on PokerGO right now. Matt Berkey dives deep into the 2010 main event final table where Joseph Chong, of course, sets millions of dollars on fire, which is a lot of fun to watch. And then every week going forward, we have more World Series final table coverage on there. Norm, you can speak. Yes, go ahead.
This reminded me, we were talking about pizza and Twitter. Remko, I know you like to cook and you're learning to cook. When you, for instance, cook bread for the first time, and then you tweet out, bread was easier than I thought. Here's my great bread.
Yeah.
Everything's easier than it looks to get it okay, and then to get it really, really good is hard.
Yeah.
So then I don't want you tweeting out pictures of what appeared to be like 2 oversized white turds. They were just large blobs of dough. And maybe it tasted good, but wait till you get better. It's the same thing with the whole thing in this country. Is like everyone got a Weber grill a few years ago, a great gas grill. Everyone has it in your backyard now. Just because you have a gas grill doesn't mean you're, Anthony Bourdain or Bobby Flay or Guy, whatever his name is. You're just a guy in the backyard with a gas grill. I don't want to see your bread until it's really, really good bread. That's all.
I'm not sure if anyone can see it. If you look very closely behind me on this side, my sourdough starter is actually fermenting as we speak over there in the corner. So Norm, when my first sourdough loaf is ready, I will carve your name at the top and I will send you a photo of my first damn sourdough bread, and you better deal with it. And I might even make a pizza with the sourdough whole situation going on. And if that ever turns out to be something, you can have my 91st try where maybe then it's passable for your palate.
And you just reminded me, since you're again giving me shit, that if I would watch the Nuremberg trials, which is a famous documentary film, before I were to watch The Adventures of Remko on your goddamn bike. I would watch 4 hours of a Nazi trial before I watch you again on that goddamn bike, going through whatever you're going through with whoever woman lost a bet and has to ride next to you. We're done.
What a disastrous content idea. I believe you titled that Fuck This Hill. Well, hey, fuck this podcast. We are done, Remko. End this thing.
Yes, end this thing. Okay, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also, if you are more of an audio listener and you don't want to watch Norm and Chad, which I can totally understand, you can listen to this in audio form only, which is available through all your favorite podcasting apps. Just search for Poker Central Podcast. That is the way to find us. We'll be back next week with another guest. We're trying to move up in this world, which isn't too hard when you have Norm and Chad on the show. But noon Pacific time on Tuesday, that's when we'll be back. You guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, and we'll see you guys next week.